Are there any value-minded leaders you admire?
I'm your host, Tiffany Who, and this is Scared Confident. We're in a series here about values, answering 4 questions. And today we are talking about leaders that I aspire to be like or learn from, and how it has informed my own values-driven leadership. So my first recollection of even seeing this idea of values-driven leadership, or a leader who made a really significant decision off of his values, his or her values, instead of maybe what made sense from a business perspective. It's actually from a book that I read that Howard Schultz had written. And he spoke about, and this is probably 15 years ago, so who knows? Maybe this isn't even the story in the book, but it's how I remember it. They were looking at going into South America and opening up Starbucks stores down there. And he had, somebody had paid for a bunch of research to be done on the market about whether or not, it was receptive to the brand and the product and all of this. And the research came back and said people would love to drink coffee at Starbucks, but they will not come if you don't allow smoking. It's just not going to be a thing. And he had the courage to say, well, we don't support smoking and I want to go into South America. So we are going to open up non-smoking Starbucks stores. And that's what we're going to do. And I remember thinking about that so many times, because not only did they paid for the information that allegedly told them the answer. And he said, my values don't agree with what the research is saying. And I'm going with my gut. We're going with our culture. We're going with our values. We're going with what we know, we believe will be successful because that's who we are. And I just thought that was incredible. And I remember thinking, this was probably 15 years ago. I remember thinking, when will I be clear enough in my own core as a leader that I would have the courage to be able to make a decision like that? Because I'm sure there was a great big conference room full of important looking people that he was effectively paying for their advice. And he had the courage to stand up and say, no, that's not, like, what will we learn? What will we believe to that level where we're willing to make decisions in the face of conventional wisdom or what the advice of the people are around us? And that story stuck out to me. And for me, I think as I look at sort of these mentors or leaders far, like Howard Schultz, I've never met the man. He does no idea that I exist on the planet, and that's perfectly fine. But in many ways, his story has mentored me. And then there's also those leaders close to me at my sort of that are more central. And I think the thing I watch most is the way that they lead their people. And that's kind of passé thing to say, like, well, obvi, like, yeah, that's what leaders do. They lead people. But as a leader, you have decisions that are things like, am I in it for the long haul with my employees? Because sometimes they have a year that just kind of sucks. And do I, as a core, have a long-term perspective on my talent such that they're maybe going to be in a position, or they're going to have a year, or they're going to have a period of time where they don't perform to the level that the sort of model would say they need to? And are you going to be in it for the long haul with them and work through that? Or are you going to replace them more quickly because you're going to be more production oriented? And I think we can talk about the story in a way where we really glamorize the person who has a long-term view of talent, where it's like, are you going to have a long-term view of the human, or are you going to have a short-term perspective on the business where you're demanding performance? Like, well, when you talk about it that way, you're sort of leading the witness to the quote unquote right answer. But I've seen both models actually be very successful financially and culturally. High performance cultures don't take the long-term view on people. They bring them into high pressure, high performance cultures. They create an environment where that's the expectation, and the sort of rewards and culture reflects that. And they can both be successful. So those are things that I watch and think about. And they can both be right. But what is right for me? And as you're listening to this, what is right for you? And I think our job as leaders, and it can be kind of hard because you do feel a little bit like you're testing it out, right? You don't have I always joke, if I had 15 years to run Element 3 and like learn all the things, and then I got to start back over at 25 and go from 25 to 40 again, wow, I would be so much better at it the second time around. But that's not how it goes. are experimenting and learning in real life. And so, I've talked about my own personal values, these set of 6, and really thinking about how do those apply to the decisions that I make as a leader. And some of those are the ways that I show up. Like, I talked about staying scared, about pushing bravery into our culture so that people understand. And I had this conversation with somebody yesterday. I was like, you understand that I will never, ever, ever, ever fire you because you made a mistake on something. I will never do that. You can rest in that safety. And that's a core value of mine, that I want to be scared. I understand there's risk-taking and testing and piloting and uncertainty when you choose to live in a world that is about staying scared. And so to invite my people into that domain with me, I have to remove the risk for them, right? I have to help them understand this penalty will not be here. In fact, you'll be rewarded because we push the boundaries of things. And so I think as leaders, we have to think through, how does that come to bear, not just in our own minds, but how do we bring it to life really intentionally for the people and organizations that we lead? And candidly, this is still such a work in process for me. I feel like I'm getting new understanding every year of what it means to really drive and build a culture. And as I get further and further out of the work, like I'm not functionally pushing buttons on marketing anymore, you have more time and space to say, my job is to lead well. My job is to create a crisp articulation and understanding of what it means to live in and excel in our culture. And it's difficult to make that explicit because oftentimes for us as leaders, it's very much intuitive to who we are. It's an extension, these companies that we're building. But we have to understand we will never be able to create or lead or build something that is beyond what we are. We just can't do it. Like, I don't mean that the talents and capabilities of the team, but I mean the culture will never be able to be more than what we individually possess. And so it's important that we continue to grow and push ourselves in these ways. So when we choose our values over money, we choose our values over power, we choose our values over something that we believe we're pursuing. And that really is where we start to really learn what we believe.
So what else is on your mind? Text me, 317-350-8921, 317-350-8921. And be sure to follow along on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening today.